case. And that's the other thing is, as we go around once more to talk about some of the topical awareness that you bring, that you have, and maybe that you can gain from working, some of the positive aspects of people's response to flood and stormwater that are coming about. We'll probably talk about that more in the second panel after the rain girl. But I also, as well as working with people who are idiots, I've worked with an awful lot of genius people out there who seem to finally be coming up with some pretty cool solutions. So, if some of you have some things you want to highlight in terms of the way floods could be mitigated or lived with as a natural phenomenon more elegantly, that may have come across, please see this. So that's a lot of things. Again, we want to go from the other end forward this time, Katherine.
Okay, so
sorry. There's some positive ways people learn to
right,
flood,
right,
and there's also the issue of how you as an artist focus on a topic and what you intend to do by doing that, which you've sort of addressed.
Oh, okay.
So,
yeah, so, I think that I don't exactly know a good answer to how we can better live with floods. I think don't build on a floodplain. And, that seems pretty easy to think about. But as far as topical awareness, I just think that that for my images, my work especially, I think that these images are so fleeting and they're also just so present in all of our lives that they often don't get looked at. And then again, like I said, once that moment has passed, except for maybe if you think of like Katrina, that image has kind of stood, in our minds. But once
that's right. There's one artist who's in here today making cocoa from Texas.
Right. But I have a version which isn't Katrina, but I bet a lot of people would just automatically think it's Katrina. But so these moments that are important and then not important, or important to the people who they impact and not important. And so my work, it makes me slow down and like literally look at and like study an image for a really long time. And I think that also the smallness, the intimacy of the work, that you really have to kind of step up to it to see what is going on, and you really have to look at it. So maybe it's just bringing those issues to the forefront of people's minds as they look at it.
Can I interject there before we go down my line? Throw yet another question that might be easier to get at or harder, doesn't matter to me, but you talked about intimacy and how you approach that. To me, one of the interesting things about the show has been the sometimes subtle differences in tone and approach. You've all got to think about that in dealing with disaster and tragedy. And I see a lot of differences. I don't want to try to characterize what different people's approaches are. I think we've already heard some differences from really very spiritual themes that Mark discussed to the more historical and personal that to many of you. So if that's another way to kind of get at it. The approach in terms of tone, because so many of us do chuckle when we first see the radar and across the pitch. I feel like that's kind of an issue here too. I'm curious about those differences, the different works and different things. If that's another way to get at this pretty good topic.
I think that it does have. I think that my work definitely always has it's kind of loud, and it does have a humorous undertone. But sometimes you can get at problems better with humor than we should.
I photographed those spring. One I think is the two pictures are maybe 6 or 7 years apart, and it's one is spring, one is wintertime, and there's sort of natural flooding. Sort of, because who knows what they've done upstream in terms of and the pond itself is a clay pit pond, so it's been dug out to make bricks. So I'm not sure. You asked about what people can do. I'm not authoritative. I would say people need to be flexible, though. The chapel might be flexible for, and you just go to some place and they say, it's a 25-year floodplain or a 50-year, and so this is something. But there are no guarantees. And people have a tendency to want control of things to a huge degree and kind of develop some mental construct that's going to help them to navigate. But, you're kind of on your own, and nobody's in charge.
I guess I'm always questioning our relationship to each disaster, and that's why I'm interested in finding imagery online and making pain in response to something that I find online, and I necessarily don't have any relation to it at all. I try to understand it, but I don't think I can understand it. So then I present it to the viewer and maybe remove it from that space. And then it's a whole different conversation as soon as that starts. So that's the relationship that I have, and I always kind of throw it back at the viewer and where you stand. And it's sort of all of our responsibility. It's maybe Hurricane Katrina or Hurricane Ike or a flood, but in a bigger sense, it's sort of our issue with everyone's.
I work, and I said this to Ben a lot. So when we were in the studio, I was like, painting is not a thing. It's painting. And basically, that's part of that is the light. I like that you can't look at my painting and know my opinion. Because it's just an image and it's been decontextualized and it's been given to you in a way that should hopefully be just really suffuse with emotion. That's pretty much it. That's why images carry so much weight in our memory, is that it's connected to the body. So I think I could come up a whole bunch of ideas, having lived in areas where people populate their water generation after generation after generation with no real reason other than this is where they live. But I think as a painter, that's sort of what I'm glad about with my forms, is that I can present the image to you and it's your responsibility. That's what awareness is.
Before I comment on, I have some stuff to say about mine, but I want to say something about what you were saying about the weather pattern on TV and stuff like that. There have been times when I've called up the weather, get a weather report, and the guy will say, well, it's sunny and it's this and that, and I have to look outside the window, it's raining right now. I'm talking in particular about aviation weather. I'll call the airport and ask for a weather briefing, and they'll give me the report they think is what the report at the airport, and it's nice. We got you out the window, and I think that's an echo of what you're saying about the stuff on television. Sometimes has nothing to do with reality. They're just putting on a show.
Well, what Mark's saying about hardly in touch or just rely on instruments or whatever.
Yeah. Now, if I may, one of the reasons I chose hourglasses and the soil and water collected from specific places and all that procedure of doing that, I don't know if everyone has the same feeling that I do. When I go to a historical place, when I walk on, which I was just doing recently, walking on some civil road out there, I feel the spirits of the people that were there at those times. And that's what the Earth is. The Earth has all of that history built into it. And when I went to each of these individual places, I was struck by the history that had happened there. So it occurred to me, well, there was an entirely different feeling I had when I was at that place than when I was a couple blocks away. And I said, well, I'm taking some of that place now. I'm putting it into these containers now. Am I taking that little piece of time and of history and bringing it here now? And can you experience that same feeling of being connected to it that you feel when you're at that actual place? So it was an attempt to connect and communicate with those events and those historical events and places. It became the work of art